Hi, everybody. Dave Pomeroy here with another Nashville Musicians Podcast. Very excited today to have as our guest an incredible arranger, singer, producer, you name it. He's pretty much done it all. Bergen White. Bergen, welcome.
Thank you, Dave.
So you've had quite a story. You were born in Oklahoma.
That's right.
But you moved to Nashville at a pretty young age. Tell me about that.
Yeah, born in Miami, Oklahoma, but we were barely there, that I remember. I don't remember any of that, but we lived there a while, then moved to Neosho, Missouri, then Seminole, Texas, then Memphis, and then came to Nashville when I was in the 8th grade.
Wow.
And I met Bobby Russell, who wrote Honey, Little Green Apples, and Sure Gonna Miss Her, The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia. But anyway, he and I started singing together. He was in the 7th grade. I was in the 8th. We started singing together, and went to Hillsborough High together and Belmont together. And but anyway, he got after all that, he got in the music bit. He was already in the music business. He had a hit record when he was right after high school called Bobby Russell and the Impalas. They had a record called The Raven, Once Upon a Midnight Dreary. Anyway. But anyway, he was in the business, and he was a writer, and he was a really good singer. And he was with a company that was doing sound-alikes, copying hit records. And they would, every week, they would look at Cashbox and Billboard and find the records that were moving the fastest.
And recut them.
And cut them. And this is back when I first got in. Bill Justice was arranging these things.
Yeah.
I mean, they did big records, and so you'd have to hire, if the record has the London Symphony on it, you've got to get some musicians, But anyway, he was doing all the arrangements, but the Beatles, this was in '64. I taught school when I got out of college. I taught school in Fairview, Tennessee. I taught the 7th and 8th grade. I taught school 2 years, and Bob and I stayed in touch, and he called me one night and said, "Hey, man, you want to come and make a little extra money and sing harmony on the Beatles had just gotten big, like I said." And I said, "Yeah," because I wasn't making anything teaching,
Sure.
And so I started singing. The first one I did was Please, Please Me, the Beatles. But from being there just a little while, the guy producing them, he could tell that I was into more than just singing. And he said, "You want to try it out to arrange some of these?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And Bill Justice had taken me kind of under his wing, to show me stuff. And I said, "Well, if it's okay with Bill." And he said, "Oh, yeah, he's encouraging us to try to use you." So the first one I actually arranged was Yesterday of the Beatles.
Wow.
It had a string quartet, and
Yeah.
Wayne Moss on guitar. Anyway, we're in the studio, and I'm scared to death. I've written these string quartet, and Wayne, and we're running through it. And we've run through it one time, and the lady that was playing the viola was Lillian Hunt. And she said, "Bergen." And so I thought, "Oh, what have I done?" And I walked over, and she pointed with her bow. She said, "I can't play that note." I said, "Why not?" She said, "It's not on the instrument."
Whoops.
I said, "Oh."
You'd written outside the range of the...
Too low. I'd written too low, and I said, "Well, how low can you go?" She said, "C is my low note." Well, see, I learned that never left me, and that's basically how I learned to write, by writing it wrong and having players tell me.
Now, had you played piano as a kid to give you that knowledge, and how'd you learn to read music if you really had not thought you'd pursue a career in music?
Well, my dad was a music teacher.
Ah.
And he directed ministry music in Baptist churches all over where we lived. And he had me in his choirs when I was
Okay, so you were reading, singing, and reading music.
Yeah, I didn't even know. I thought everybody did that,
Right. you recorded yesterday the arrangement on yesterday on the Sound-Alikes, and I mean that record is very bare. It's just the guitar and the strings, and so
and Bobby sang it, but anyway, that's how I started writing, and because Bill Justice was doing Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, and all these people, and he said, let Bergen do this, man. He needs to learn this, and so. How can you learn to arrange better than copying hit records?
There you go. Yeah, it's like this worked.
Yeah,
let's do it again. Yeah, what an interesting journey. And so Wayne Moss was around very early on in the things you were doing.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure And was that at Cinderella? Was those recorded? Which I think has to be the first home studio that I know of in Nashville. I mean,
Oh yeah,
and it's still there today. I mean, I think Wayne is one of those unsung heroes who did a lot of great stuff.
Oh yeah, and he and I produced my first album ever. It's for women only thing, and
yeah, I was going to ask about that record. It was kind of like smooth jazz before smooth jazz, and very very interesting project, and that was for Shelby Singleton.
Yes, it was. And Bob Beckham, dear friend of mine, publisher.
Combine Publishing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we played golf everywhere. But anyway, he took me to meet Shelby. And he pretty much told Shelby, he said, you need to put this out. Shelby did, and it didn't sell anything. But it got a lot of great reviews. I mean, it really did. And the guy that was in Law and Order, Jerry Orbach, the actor, he also was a record reviewer. He reviewed my records.
Wow. Well, what struck me in what I listened to from there, it was kind of like those Jackie Gleason records that he would make, for lovers, music for lovers, with a really smoothly orchestrated, smooth jazz before what became smooth jazz existed. My dad was a big record collector, and I have quite a few of his Jackie Gleason records. That reminded me a little bit of that, where it's just so lush and pretty. So right away, you found your voice as a singer, but also as an arranger. And did you ever? Do you play? Do you sit down and play instruments besides the piano? I mean, do you? It's hard to put this into the right words. I mean, you have these two very unique talents of being able to sing and being able to arrange. And I just, it's most of the people I know translate that through an instrument. Yeah. And whereas you're just, you can hear it in your head and write it down. I mean, that's just fabulous. So when after you started recording and arranging, eventually you got to write things from scratch. Can you talk a little bit about how you met and some of the work you did with Tony Joe White? Because that stuff is fascinating to me.
Oh yeah, Tony Joe White. He was. Now let me explain. Like Polk Salad Annie, I didn't have anything to do with that track. I just wrote the horns.
Right.
But anyway, Billy Swan produced that record. And he brought it to me after they'd cut the track to put horns on it. But he had his own ideas. He wanted this and that, and so he hummed them to me, and that's what I wrote. And then he took it to John R. Bless John R. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the DJ.
Yeah, marvelous guy. And I grew up listening to him, music after hours.
Yep.
But anyway, so many people had so much respect for John R., and Billy took it to John R. to listen to it. And John R., I heard this from Billy. John R. said, who wrote those horns? And Billy said, well, you said to get Bergen White, and I did. He said, Bergen wrote those? And John R. said, did you tell him what to write, or did you let him write what he wanted to write? And Billy said, well, no, I knew what I wanted. He said, give it back to him and tell him to write what he wants to write. And so I did. And so that's what was
What's on the record with those bends
and
everything, because I just listened to it about an hour ago. It's a great arrangement.
Well,
so that was the second shot at it.
I wrote it twice.
Interesting. Wow, I never knew that.
And then Elvis loved it.
Right.
And he wanted to do it on his album that he did when he appeared in Las Vegas in the 70s, I think.
Sure.
Las Vegas International, something like what it was called.
Yeah, live at the Hilton there.
And he said, get that same guy, told Felton, he said, get that same guy that did Tony Joe White's, which was me.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what started me with Elvis.
That's great. I mean, and that's how it happens, especially in Nashville. Hey, who's that? Well, I like that. Well, call that person.
Yeah.
I mean, I had that happen to me a few times, and it's, it's so organic, but that's how it's supposed to work, and it worked that way. So what was it like working with Elvis?
Well, I must have done 50 string arrangements for Elvis, but they were all overdubs. Elvis wasn't there. The only time I met Elvis, I used to sing with the Jordanaires. Sometimes they would have a session and they couldn't get in touch with Neil or Hoyt or whoever.
Right. You would sub.
And they would call me and say, if you can work, we can use you. So Gordon called me one afternoon or morning and said, are you working at 6 tonight? And I said, no. He said, well, you are now. He said, we got a session at 6 at RCA, Studio B. And I said, yeah, I'm good for that. And he said, oh, well, meet me there early because this is for Elvis. And he said, we've got to go through security. So I get over there early, and we go through security, walk through the back door of Studio B, up the steps, and if you turn right, that's where the control room is. Mm-hmm. And you walk through it to get to the studio.
Yeah.
So I walked through the control room. Pachuki was sitting in there, and I opened the door to go into the studio, and David's sitting at the piano, and Elvis is standing right next to him. And Elvis is dressed like he's getting ready to go on stage. He's got on a jumpsuit and everything. And I walked through the door, and David said, hey, asshole, come on over. I want you to meet Elvis.
That's David Briggs.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so I started walking across the floor about 10 steps, and Elvis met me, stuck out his hand, and shook my hand, and he said, thank you very much.
right off the script.
That's all he said to me. And so I walked on over to sing with the group, and I was taking Neil Matthews' place.
Right.
And then there were 4 gals, Winnie and Millie and Prissy Reed and Diane Tidwell were the girls. We didn't record a note that night because Elvis wanted to play his new single, and those are acetates, you remember?
Right.
He put it on the turntable, and he couldn't get it to work. And he kept messing with it and hitting things, and he finally said, Al, come out here and get this thing to work. So Pachuca came out. He couldn't get it to work either. Now, here we are in RCA and can't get...
the center of the universe.
Can't get the turntable to work. Well, it made Elvis mad.
Yeah.
And he wound up... He kicked a hole in the cabinet that the turntable was sitting on. And then he took his headphones and threw them against the wall, and then he kind of composed himself, walked around and shook everybody's hand and left. We did record a note. And that had David Briggs, Norbert, Jerry Kerrigan,
sure,
Charlie McCoy, Chip Young, and the rest of us.
Just sitting around.
Didn't record a note.
Well, he was famous for not starting till really late, but that takes it to a whole other level.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going home, and I'm sure they paid everybody. It's amazing.
It's kind of like George Jones. He just left.
Yes, right. No show. Well, so David Briggs, how did you all meet? I mean, for those that might not know who David Briggs is, a wonderful piano player, real character who just recently passed away, and David and Bergen worked together for many, many years.
Yeah, I met David in '64. Wow. When I told you about Bobby Russell calling me to sing on these sound-alikes, I got there and David Briggs was playing piano. And David and Norbert, that whole bunch that came from Muscle Shoals.
Yeah, the original Muscle Shoals section. And
I just fell in love with David. I mean, because everything he played, if I was a piano player, that's what I would have played. He never played too much.
Yeah.
Knew what to play, when to play it, but anyway, that's when we met. We just hit it off, and I worked with him from then until, he died.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, David was. I didn't get to work with David a whole lot, but every time I did, it was just one of those things where he was one of those players that without ever trying to dominate, it's like, I'm playing exactly what needs to happen. Come on.
Yeah.
And it's just like, as a bass player, you're listening to what he's doing with his left hand. It's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm just going with you, man. And he, of course, he had an incredible sense of humor. He made me blush probably more than just about any human being ever, especially late at night, if we might run into him somewhere out on the town. But you guys were CMA award show directors for many, many years together.
We started that in 1988, and David quit about 2000 or something like that, and then I did it from that point on until another 10 years or so.
Yeah.
But we did the CMA awards, but David was. There's nobody like him. I've been very fortunate in that I've met, like, Bill Justice.
Yeah.
Nobody like Bill Justice. Same thing with David. I mean, he's one of a kind, you know.
Absolutely. Well, it just seemed like you guys just had this telepathic communication with each other where you just barely even had to say anything. I remember doing that band for the 75th Opry anniversary, I think it was. No, CMA anniversary, I'm not sure which one it was, but one of the TV shows. Yeah. And it was just, boy, there just was never a dull moment, but also it was like incredibly efficient and totally professional. And, each of the folks in the band got to write little bumpers to the commercials. And that was really fun to, like sit back and hear that and do the pre-records and everything, and just you guys were such a pleasure to work with. You did quite a few things with Chet Atkins.
Oh yeah.
And talk about Chet. I mean, I think again, I give a lot of credit for Nashville being the way it is because of when the major labels came here and they hired Chet and Owen Bradley to run the labels, and they just said, hey, we're going to do this the right way. Yeah. And we're not going to screw over our buddies because we got to play with them on Saturday night at the country club. Right. And so, and I was fortunate enough to get to work with Chet later in his career, thanks to David Hungate's, recommending me when David fell and broke his leg and didn't want to go to Texas for a TV taping. Right. But you did some really great stuff with Chet. And what was that like back in those days? That must have been something.
Well, I think that Chet first hired me around in '67. He had an album called Solid Gold, I think is what it was. But it had things like Romeo and Juliet, movie themes and things on it. And for some reason, because I hadn't done anything, except I'd been with Ronnie and the Daytonas, who Bill Justice produced.
Right.
And we had a big hit. But anyway, back to Chet. I don't know, Chet just wanted to give me a chance or something, and he did. And I wrote these charts, and I remember standing in the studio with my headphones on, and I'm listening to it, and I think, Lord, this sounds marvelous, And I couldn't wait to get in the control room to listen to it with Chet, the playback. I went in to listen to the playback, and he's sitting there at the table, and he's got a pad in front of him and pencil, and he's like drawing doodles or something, And I'm listening to the playback, and I'm real excited. I'm looking at Chet, and I want some kind of response, and it finally finishes, and Tom Pick or whoever the engineer was, well, what do you think, Chet? And Chet said, oh, I think that'll be all right.
He was very deadpan. But you were looking for a little more encouragement.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was thinking, he must have hated it, But he kept hiring me till he died, I worked with Chet, and I want to tell this wasn't a funny thing. Close to the end for Chet, Bob Beckham called me, and he said, hey, son, he said, I'm taking Chet to lunch today. You ought to join us if you can. I said, sure, I'd love to. So I met Beckham at his office, and we drove over in his Cadillac, and we pulled up behind Chet's office, and Bob said, go in and get Chet. He said, I don't have to walk up those steps. I said, okay. So I went in the back door and walked up the steps to Chet's office, and I said, Chet, you ready to go? He said, yeah. And so he gets up and he comes over, and we walk down the steps and out onto the back porch. And he says, hey, Bergen, hand me one of those golf clubs over there. And there was about 50 golf clubs stacked up in this corner. And I said, anyone in particular? He said, no, they're all the same. Just hand me one. So I picked up one and handed it to him. He said, not that one, dumbass.
Who knew?
That was just Chet. That's just the way he was, you know.
Yeah, he was very deadpan. I was, you know, the first time I thought I was going to get to play with him was at one of these, you know, Music City golf tournaments.
Yeah.
And I was in the house band, and I'm like, man, we're going to get to play with Chet. This is so awesome. And Chet gets there. He says, I just need the drummer. And it was like, oh man, I thought, there it goes. It's never gonna happen again. Yeah. And then, you know, years later, you know, I did that Read My Licks television special with him. And then from that point on, he kind of just invited me into the little club and the Saturday morning breakfast at the Cracker Barrel, and I'd go down there, and you'd never know who was going to be sitting there. One week it'd be Mark Knopfler, next week it'd be Goober from Mayberry, George Lindsay, Ray Stevens. You never knew who was going to show up, but yeah, I always thought it was interesting, you know, how Chet seemed to like he played the guitar, he had an incredible passion. And then as a person, it was like I already got all that out of my system. I can just be very chill.
Oh yeah, he was amazing. You know, I used to live on the corner of Tyne and Linwood. Chet lived right up behind me.
Sure, yeah, I was to his house a couple times.
And my wife was killed in a car wreck in 1983.
Oh gosh.
And Chet and Leona were so compassionate and everything, and about maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that, Leona called me, and she said, you ought to come up to the house. And I said, well, what for? And she said, well, Chet just wants you up here, if you could come up here. And I said, well, it'll be a few minutes. I got my little baby, my son, and anyway, I got my mother to come over, and so I went up to Chet's. Larry London's there, you know, and it was George Benson.
Oh, my goodness.
He was doing with George Benson, which I wound up writing strings for.
Oh.
But he was amazing. Of all the people, and I didn't mention Gordon Stoker, but people like Gordon Stoker, Jordan Ayers, Chet, I mean, when I have them in my corner, when I'm just starting, that gives you a pretty good kick in the butt, you know.
Well, and you know, it's a compliment, but it's also a challenge because you know you got to be up to that level,
right? Yeah.
And you know, and you're presented over the years with a lot of songs that probably when originally written, no one ever thought that they would ever need or want strings or voices or horns, and yet you find your place. You know, like I mean, because I was listening to Polk Salad Annie, and it's like. And the horns they're just right in there, man, the way they're supposed to be. That's so interesting. So, you know, with all the great songwriters in Nashville, you know, you had a chance to work with some of these amazing artists. A name that jumped out at me was Mickey Newberry.
Yeah.
He was a very interesting character. I got to know him a little bit. Don Williams was a huge Mickey Newberry fan, and he had Mickey open for us several times. We did a 2-week residency in Vegas, and Mickey opened the show just solo, just by himself, and we did an English tour. And he was just, to me, really fascinating person and wrote some really interesting songs.
Yeah.
Well, what was it like working with him?
Well, he was one of the writers at Beckham's office. What used to be, or it was Bill Justice's office first. It was called Toonville. But they would meet in that big office in the middle, and writers would come in, and Mickey was always there, and they would sit there, and he'd just play guitar and sing, and you got a show, you know, it's worth a lot of money if you have to pay for it, but Mick, I did an album with Jerry Kennedy produced on Mickey Newberry, and did strings on it and stuff, and Mickey was, I mean, I didn't know Mickey well. I just worked on his stuff.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, he was kind of, one of those, it's very interesting characters. And to go back kind of another backward now, Chris Christopherson, I think changed a lot of things for a lot of people, coming to Nashville and kind of breaking the rules to some degree with his way of writing. Yeah. I don't know if I'm presuming he was there before Mickey would have come after Chris. I feel like Chris knocked that door open, and you did some things with him as well. He was a very interesting guy. The couple times I got to play with him, he had a way of looking at you like, what are we doing? It was just kind of interesting. It was almost like he was challenging you in a very like, do you know how this song? I don't know if I know how this song. It's like me and Bobby McGee. It's like, come on, man. What do you mean? He would just, I don't know how to describe it, but it was just a mischievous look of like, are you paying attention? It was very cool. He was always very nice, but I'm sure it was interesting when he was first in town. He was probably one of those people that just broke all the rules because he didn't know what the rules were.
Yeah. And, Fred Foster signed him and produced him. And the first record that Chris ever had, it's called Silver Tongue Devil and I think is what it is. But Fred had cut all these songs, I don't remember how, 10 or 12 songs, and he had cut them 4 different times in different studios with different musicians. He was looking for some magic, that he couldn't find.
Right, because he didn't want it to be a formula.
Yeah, and so he came over to my office on Blair Boulevard, and he walked in. He set a stack of tapes. I can't remember what speed they were then, but he said, "Look," he said, "I've had it with this. I've listened to this so much it's driving me crazy. I can't figure out what is good and what's bad." And he said, "I want you to listen to these. There's 4 different takes on each song. You listen to these. You pick the one that's the best rhythmically and for Chris, and write what you want to write. Let's get this record done." So, I mean, and so I did. And we went in and cut the record. And it's got Love It Her Was Easier Than Everything Else,
right,
and a bunch of stuff. And I remember, we got it done, and that's at the time when everything was getting so busy, man. I was working on something else. And Fred called me for something. And this is about 6 months or so, or a year later.
Right.
I walk into Fred's office, and if were you ever in his office, it looked like a gymnasium, and gold records everywhere. And so I'm waiting for Fred to come in, and I'm looking at all these records, and there it is on the wall, Silver Tongue Devil and I, gold record, And I'm thinking, well, where's my gold?
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, that's great.
Anyway.
It's nice to know it's a success. It's nice when things get when you get surprised like that.
Yeah.
I had one of those with Chet actually, where he was coming out of retirement. He wanted to play around town, and it was when he settled at Cafe Milano and did he did a year or 2 there at Cafe Milano in the 2000s. But he came to see me play one night at the Exit Inn, and I'm doing my solo thing, and I'm playing my silly song, "The Day the Bass Players Took Over the World," that I was a co-writer on. And next day I get a call from Chet's office. Chet would like to speak with you. It's like, hey, send over that funny song, Double Spaced. I'm like, okay, why does he want to hear that? Okay, whatever. And I didn't hear anything for 6 months. And then I get a call from Sony Records, and they're saying, hey, we need the publishing information on your song. And I'm like, yeah, why? It goes, oh, Chet's recorded it. I said, well, he recorded it? Well, what's the album called? And they said, you don't know? And I said, no. They said, The Day Finger Pickers Took Over the World. And it ended up being the title track of Chet's final album with him and Tommy Emmanuel. So when those things happen that you have no idea are coming, it's like, that's like that's why I got in the music business, was to get surprised like that, the good surprise, opposed to a bad one. But yeah, that Silver Tongue Devil, and Christopherson just seemed like he came along. And, we see this from time to time in Nashville where people show up that don't know the rules and they just start doing stuff and it works.
Yeah.
Victor Wooten on the bass, it's like nobody said you couldn't do that. Yeah. So he just, and now he's, world famous and a lot of people like that. It's fascinating, who can come to Nashville and have a successful career. and the fact that you grew up here and, went to Hillsborough High School and have seen all of these things. I mean, all of these things, like you got to work with Willie in the early stages of Willie's career. I know you did a few things with him.
Well, yeah, I worked this was in '69.
Yeah.
And Willie came to town. Chet was producing it. And Willie looked like one of the Beatles. I mean, his hair was cut real short. I mean, like a flat top.
Yeah.
Had on a suit and tie. And imagine that.
Yeah, I've seen those pictures. You just kind of go, what?
Right. And the title song was My Own Peculiar Way was the name of the album.
Yeah.
And this was my first big session. And Chet's producing it. We got the A-team, and Nita Kerr singers and a string section.
All at once,
And
going
it's all
down
at once.
live.
Yeah. And I remember, Wayne Moss and Charlie McCoy were both on the session, and they both separately told me, listen, you need to be alert to the fact that this band is going to mess with you, meaning the A-team or whatever you call it.
Practical jokes of the musical nature.
And so we're running through the first song, and it starts just with rhythm guitar. And anyway, Harmon counted it off, and the rhythm guitar, Ray Eddington's playing. And then the band comes in, and Bob Moore's playing a half step below everybody else. And I thought, this is what they were talking about.
Yeah, at least you had a warning.
Oh yeah, and I never even looked sideways. I just sat there and listened, and Chet was in on it too. You know? And he said, "Okay, let's cut it." And so when we cut it, he played it in the right key.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Well, yeah, Bob had a very interesting sense of humor for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I had some good experiences with Bob and Roy Orbison.
Yeah, one of the nicest guys I ever met in my life. But I was never in the studio with him cutting a record. It was all I did was overdubs.
Yeah,
but he.
I mean, you wouldn't know it listening to those things, but Yeah, I did. We did one tour where he was on, and I got a chance to be around him a little bit. And when I was younger, it was a little too Elvis for me. I didn't quite understand it, but hearing it as an adult and that range, he blew me away. I mean, I know that song "Running Scared." Yeah. He would do the big, huge operatic note at the end, and the crowd would go crazy and walk off the stage, and they come back out and they kick back into it, and he hits that note, and then he goes up another fifth. It's like, wow, what's up there? But yeah, he struck me as being a very humble guy, and I think, again, one of the things about Nashville is, and there are always exceptions, but for the most part, people are pretty darn nice. I've been, I was a military kid, so I lived all over the place, and then moved here when I was 21, and this is home. And, I think about the way I was treated by people and getting to work with you and David on the, CMA 75th anniversary. I mean, so many things have happened, and for you to have seen all of this, what do you miss about the old days, but how do you feel about where we are?
Well, what I miss about the old days, we're talking about those days that will never happen again, because when I first got into business, it wasn't unusual, like for the Jordanaires, to do 4, like a 10, 2, 6, and a 10.
Yep.
And sometimes another 2 a.m. because you book sessions all night.
Yep.
And I mean, like studios like Columbia and RCA and all the studios around, they had sessions going all day long. Yep. And the players, like when David and them came to town, I mean, they had 3 or 4 sessions a day. And they were arguing how's the best way to get from RCA to the Bradley's barn,
Right.
in 1 hour,
No kidding.
And but those days were great for me because every time I walked in the studio, I learned something.
Yeah. What I think is really important is the the realness, the authenticity of the way those things are recorded. Everybody at once, the imperfections, the little rubs that make it human. To me, that's I don't want to hear something that's perfect. I want to hear something that moves me.
Oh, yeah.
And I think some of these records that you've been a part of, talk a little bit about George Jones. I'm sure that was an interesting experience, or was it again one where you were usually overdubbing and not in the same room together?
Well, a lot of them were overdubs, and some of them were live, and just being in the studio, because I was singing with the Jordanaires,
Right, of course.
on something like The Race Is On or some of that stuff. But George Jones he was a creature of some kind. I'm not sure.
Very unique.
Yeah, but he was, and Tammy, working with both of them.
Right.
I did a thing with, after George was gone and Tammy was with George Ritchie.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I was playing golf with Beckham. We were in Palm Springs and got back to the room the last day we were there, and my phone was doing the beep. That's back in the Codaphone days.
Yes.
Remember those?
Oh, yes.
I checked my Codaphone. It was George Ritchie. He and Tammy called me Cool Licks because I had a production company called Cool Licks.
Oh, there you go.
But he said, Cool Licks. He said, where are you, man? And I said, well, I'm Palm Springs. He said, oh. He said, when do you get back? And I said, well, we're leaving tomorrow. And he said, well, I need you on Monday night in New York. I need you to conduct for Tammy. She's doing this big show at the town hall.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I normally conduct her shows, but he said, I need to be in the booth. And he said, you've written all these charts anyway, so I need you to be there. And I said, well, I'll call my sister and see if she can get my same tux from Bittner's, and I'll be there. So anyway, we worked it out, and my sister went and got my tux. And I told her, I said, tell those people, the tux people, same tux they always give me, but tell them to make sure my sleeves are long enough. The sleeves always shrink up. I want the cufflinks to be out where you can see them,
Right, while you're doing your thing.
So anyway, she meets me at the airport with my tux, and I get back on a plane and head to New York, and straight to the town hall. And anyway, we have this dress rehearsal, we run through everything. Everything's working good. Then we go back to get something to eat and to dress. So I get back there, and I walk into my little dressing room and put on the pants first. That's cool. Then I put on the shirt, and I slip my arms into the sleeves, and I'm thinking, what in the world is this? I'm having to push them way up. I mean, they wouldn't fit Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And I thought, what am I going to do with this? And so I went out in the hall, and this little lady's ironing clothes for people getting ready to go on stage. And I said, honey, do you have some strong rubber bands? And I said, look, I need to. And she said, oh, let me find you something. So she got me something. So I put the rubber band on, and I pushed the sleeves up and put on my jacket and had my cufflinks. And that was good. That was going to be all right. So we're on stage, and I'm standing on my podium, and the place is packed, and Tammy's right behind me, and here's the orchestra, Tammy's band and the orchestra. And the first thing you hear is, bum, 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 ba-dum, and all this big fanfare. And a big cymbal crash and everything, and anyway, I hear this voice, ladies and gentlemen, the queen of country music, Miss Tammy Wynette. The curtain opens. I give a big downbeat like that, and my sleeves shot out of my jacket like a Roman candle. And the band, the orchestra, the string players, they're all bent over, but they didn't stop playing. They're all still, and the French horn guy busted his lip, and I'm trying to pull my sleeves back into my jacket. It was awful.
Looks like you're waving it.
Yeah. Right. And I remember the whole show I was reaching in and trying to pull my jacket back.
Oh, my goodness.
And the show's finally over, and I'm back there changing clothes, and the concert master comes up to me and said, Mr. White, let me tell you something. He said, I've been doing this for 45 years. That's the funniest thing I've ever seen on stage. I went to
You
Georgia.
can't make that up.
No, I went to Georgia and Tammy, and I said, I'm so sorry. And they said, for what?
Yeah.
It's a great show, Cool Licks.
There you go. The best laid plans.
Yeah.
You know?
No kidding.
Gosh. So when you look back over all these years of things, what are some of your most memorable moments that we haven't touched on?
Well, Garth Brooks, Super Bowl in '93.
Nice.
And let me tell you this little story. He planned this ahead. I mean, Garth loves to pull stuff on you.
Yeah, he can do that.
And so we cut the. By the way, Garth changed his mind 3 or 4 times. He first wanted this, then he wanted this, then he wanted this, and finally we decided on something. So RCA big studio, it's called Javelina at the time,
Right.
with full rhythm and horns, strings, choir, everything. We cut the track, pre-recorded the track for Garth, and he loved it, and we mixed it. And so I went to Florida to play golf with Beckham and Ronnie Gant and Ray Baker. And I come into my room one night, and my phone's flashing, and I called. I said, "You have a message for White?" The little girl says, "Oh yes, Mr. White. Garth called." She thought it was a joke, you know. I said, "Well, did he leave a number?" She said, "Oh, yeah, this is Garth's number." So anyway, I called, and Garth said, "Hey, buddy," he said, "you know, I'm getting a little spooked because singing to a pre-recorded track, and see that this thing started with a Pharrell Morris. And while that's happening, there's little music things going on, you know, before Garth ever comes in with, oh, say. And he said, I'm getting a little spooked that, you know, I might come in at the wrong place, and that'd be a disaster, you know, because he's coming up out
With
of
the
the flag.
pre-record, right.
Coming up out of the flag with Marley Matlin, the sign language and everything. And so, would you consider coming out there to conduct me in? And I thought, well, I could probably work that into my schedule, you know.
Super Bowl.
So went out there, and this is '93. This is the same year that Michael Jackson did the halftime show.
Right.
So the security was like crazy. But we went on Saturday, we did the rehearsal, and Don Misher was producing the thing. And we're down on the field, and Garth and Marley are standing there, and Garth said, this is my arranger. And he said, I need him to be on the 50-yard line, up on something, you know, because he's going to be standing right in the middle of the Dallas Cowboys. You know?
Right.
So, because he said, I need to be able to find him, because after I've come up out of that flag, I want to look at him and he can tell me when to come in. I mean, he's making a big deal out of it, you know. And he said, make sure he's on the 50-yard line. And finally, Misher says, okay, he'll be on the 50-yard line on a box. So anyway, here we are next day. The place, 120,000 people or whatever the Rose Bowl holds.
Sure.
And I'm standing on my box with my headphones on. Cowboys on my right, Cowboys on my left. And I'm listening, and I hear him say, here comes the track. And so I hear the first. So I'm sitting over there counting these drum beats. And I see Garth and Marley coming up out of the flag. But Garth is looking toward the end zone. And I thought, wait, I'm over here.
50-yard line.
and I thought, I panicked. I thought, should I run in the end zone? I said, no, they'll tackle me. While there's security. Well, I got so dang worked up, I totally forgot where I was.
Oh, you lost count of the barumps.
Oh, my God. I think he flew me out here to bring him in, and I don't know where I am. About that time, he kind of looked over and smiled and started singing. He didn't need me there at all. He just brought me because he thought I deserved to be there, you know.
He's like that.
But after the show, we're on the little shuttle thing, and me and Alan Reynolds and Mark Miller, and Garth steps up onto the thing, and he looks through the bars, and he points at me and says, gotcha. And
That's an elaborate practical joke there.
No kidding, man. I almost soiled my pants, you know. But we got back to Nashville, and about 3 or 4 months later, we're doing some background voices at his studio.
Mm-hmm.
And Garth always meets you at the door.
Right.
And walks you out after the session.
Oh, yeah, and help you carry your gear. I've had that happen. It's like, come on, really? And it's like, yeah, really.
No
I want to help you carry your gear. He is that guy, and I knew him before he was famous, and he's that same guy.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
But he took me into this room, and he said, I want you to see something. He took me into this room, and there's this big panoramic photo taken from the blimp of Garth and Marley coming up out of the flag.
Uh-huh.
And
you on the 50.
Yeah, and he walks over to it, and he picks up a magnifying glass about the size of a basketball, and he gets up there and looks. He said, "There you are." And I can find he gave that to me, by the way. So.
Oh, that's nice. He's a good guy, and Trisha
Anyway.
too. You know, they're good people. It's always so refreshing when famous people are nice. You know,
yeah.
It makes such a difference. You know,
And it makes you appreciate it when you run into one of these that aren't very nice.
Yeah, that is for sure. Man, what a great collection of stories. Anybody else come to mind that we didn't talk about?
I've got a list of things, but you don't have time for all of them.
Well, yeah, but I mean, now you made those records on your own. Are they still available? Like the for women only? Those things, can they be found out there?
If somebody's diligent enough, they could probably find it. You know,
But they were never re-released in digital world. I mean, they're
oh yeah,
they are okay.
yeah.
Well, that's good.
And another one I did called Finale. And it actually was meant to be the follow-up to For Women Only. But, you know, I lost my contract. I wouldn't go on the road. Larry Utah flew in there from New York, and we had lunch, and he wanted me to go on the road to promote Duke of Earl that I'd done on this Finale album. And I told him, I said, Larry, I can't go on the road. I said, I'd lose everything I've got here, you know. You know, I remember great, like Kenny Buttery.
Mm-hmm.
He was as hot as you could find in town, and he went on the road with Linda Ronstadt. And by the time he quit that, he never got back to where he was.
Well, it's interesting you would say that, because I moved to town in '77, and by the time, you know, in a couple of years as I began to understand the lay of the land, there was a huge division between road players and studio players.
Absolutely.
You are one or the other. You can't be both. And I was very fortunate to have a gig with Don Williams, who didn't really want to work that much. So even at the peak of his career, we were doing 80, 85 days a year. And so I had time to try to pursue things. But there was always this barrier that until I finally said, okay, I'm getting off the road. Okay, everybody, I'm available. You know, because people just, if you called, and I also learned to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm booked that day. I wouldn't say, yeah, I'm in Timbuktu.
Right.
You know, and I was fortunate with Don for many reasons. One is that he kind of led us into the studio world. I remember right after I joined the band, he's, you know, hey, we're going to the studio next week. Any of you guys want to come, you know, watch?
Yeah.
You're welcome to. And I was usually the only one who would show up, and I'd just sit in the back and just try to learn what they were doing. And, you know, I was scared to death of everything, you know, but just trying to get an understanding of it. And so, you know, and Don gave me a lot of good opportunities. I mean, writing songs, I go, man, I wish I could write songs. You want to write a song?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he was very encouraging that way. And that's a lot of why I got into the union side of things, of, you know, trying to promote this kind of good behavior, because it is very unique. And, you know, when I compared notes with a lot of my friends, you realize not everybody was getting treated as good as I was. And it's like, hey, well, let's do better. And I've been really, really fortunate. You know, Nashville's been an amazing place, and, you know, so grateful to get to know and to get to work with folks like you, and, you know, and to have worked with David and Kenny Malone. And somebody we didn't mention we should is Charlie McCoy. What about that guy? I mean, man.
Oh, I know.
The fountain of youth.
You know, when I first got into business, I was in Charlie's band. And you said something about, did I play anything? I play a little keyboard. That's the main one.
Right.
I played some bass, you know, and I played trombone, and I played the Farfisa when I was Charlie's band.
Oh, nice.
You remember
Oh,
Farfisa?
absolutely. A whole lot easier to carry around than a Hammond B3.
Oh, no kidding, yeah.
Yeah, the
But
cheesy organ.
I played with Charlie for a while, and he, nothing country about this band. We did, one morning, we did Ralph Emery's morning show at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
He had Charlie's band, and I'm playing trombone, and we opened the show with It's Not Unusual, Tom Jones.
Yeah, sure.
Dun, da, 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 dun, da, da, da. And I'm playing trombone. I've got one note that I'm playing.
Yeah.
And Wayne Butler is playing another trombone,
Right.
and Jerry Tuttle on sax. And Charlie McCoy is he's got his bass set on a thing where he's just thumping the bass part
Right.
and playing trumpet.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that. I never saw him do it in person, but
we'd be doing one of those Motown kind of charts where the bass is going boo, 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 all over the
and
place
he'd just be hammering on the bass lines and playing trumpet.
and playing trumpet licks on the other. And I'm thinking, he's a freak. You know?
That's something. I mean, I remember, Charlie's. I forget how many solo records he said he's made now. Like, it's like 68 or some ridiculous number. And I played on one of his records, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. He goes, Dave, you're the 247th musician that's worked on my records. It's like, wow, you're really keeping track of that stuff. But, Charlie is I love his energy and he can make that harp talk. I mean, he does,
yeah.
I do a Christmas benefit show at Christchurch Cathedral every year, and Charlie's done it the last few years, and it's just to hear him play that harp in a beautiful church, it's just, it's really special. And all of my experiences with you, I can remember sitting down with you and Ed Benson when Ed kind of brought me to you and said, hey, I want you to use this guy on the next show, and you were kind enough to let me in the band, and that was just really special. And your body of work is amazing. And
thank you.
And you've helped a whole lot of people and incredible representative of how you do stuff around here.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you, Bergen, so much, man. And appreciate you coming in and telling some stories. And let's do it again sometime.
My pleasure, buddy. Thank you.
All right, man. Thank you.